Hello. Today, I'm going to show you how to package Longhorn Cloud Native Block Storage with Zarf. My name is Jason Van Breckel. I'm one of the unicorn engineers at Defense Unicorns. If you have any questions about this video or anything to have to do with Zarf or Longhorn, please hit me up at the contacts below. So today, we'll answer what is Longhorn and what problems does it solve. We'll do a quick reintroduction to Zarf. We'll talk about the basics of the Longhorn example package, what we're covering and what we're not covering. And then we'll demonstrate how to create and deploy the Longhorn package and to make sure it's working. So what is Longhorn? Longhorn is cloud-native distributed block storage for Kubernetes. It is used for block storage for Kubernetes, replication of data throughout your cluster, backup to object-based storage, so things like Amazon S3, and disaster recovery. It works a little bit like this. You have this Longhorn engine that creates Longhorn volumes. So Longhorn volume is a Kubernetes volume, the engine, and a set of replicas. So in this example here, we have this Kubernetes volume in pod 1. The data flows through the engine to replicas, both on node 1 and node 2, that are stored on the hard drives. This is essentially how Longhorn works. What you're not seeing here is you can actually have a separate cluster with disaster recovery volumes for Longhorn. We're not going to cover all of that today. We'll cover some of that in future videos. For today, we're just talking about packaging and deploying Longhorn to a Kubernetes cluster over the air gap. So a quick review of Zarf. Zarf is an always free open source product that makes air gap easy for Kubernetes. It has a CLI, which has our tools for deploying and managing applications in air gap environments, packaging your software, inspecting it with the software bill of materials, and deploying it elsewhere. This also works in cloud-native environments, but generally when we talk about Zarf, we're talking about air-gapped environments. Zarf packages are tarballs that contain everything needed to deploy your payload to a desired destination. It's defined by a YAML file. It's the zarf.yaml file, and those files come in two flavors. They come in Zarf packages, which is most of the packages you'll work with, including the one we create today, and init packages for setting up Zarf into an environment for the first time. So this has an injector, the registry seed, the container registry, and has some optional components like you could use Zarf to bootstrap a K3s cluster, a Git server, and all the logging and metrics for Zarf. Each Zarf package is built with Zarf components that could be files, Helm charts, Kubernetes manifests, container images, Git repositories, scripts, and even arbitrary data. We won't go into a deep dive of that today. Just know that if it can be packaged into a zip file, it can be packaged into Zarf. So an overview of how you might use Zarf. First, you'll define your payload into a zarf.yaml file. You'll use the Zarf binary to package that into an individual file that you'll then transport via USB, via floppy disks, however you'd like, to take over and deploy elsewhere via air gap. So what are we covering today? We're doing package and deployment of a very simple example of Longhorn with Zarf. We're not covering all of the real nitty-gritty details around Longhorn. So we're not covering object storage, we're not covering backup and recovery, we're not covering disaster recovery. These are topics that we would need significant time to dig into to help you plan what that would look like in an air-gapped environment. So now it's time for our demo. We're going to get the Longhorn example from the GitHub. We're going to review the components in the Longhorn package. We're then going to package Longhorn, and we're going to deploy Longhorn. You'll notice here, there's nothing in here around Zarf. So we're assuming that you've already downloaded Zarf, you've installed it to your machine, you have a Kubernetes cluster, and you've initialized Zarf in that cluster. If you don't know how to do that yet, just click the button here, go to the Getting Started with Zarf video, and then come back when you're done. So with that, let's get started. So this machine is already set up to run this demonstration. So it already has Kubernetes, it already has Zarf installed, it already has Zarf initialized, and the node itself has been set up with prerequisites for Longhorn. If you haven't yet, let's take a quick look as to where they are. If you go to the Longhorn site at longhorn.io, navigate to Docs, the latest version, and over here to quick installation. And you'll see here how it can be installed. We've done a variation of the Helm install with the air-gapped environment section. We've already went through the installation requirements, things like the version of Kubernetes, the version of Docker, the setup for read-write execute support, and the setup for OpenSCSI and for mount propagation. So make sure your node and your Docker setup has all of those things before you attempt this. Otherwise, it's just going to fail. So let's go ahead and get the example code from the Zarf website. I'm going to go to GitHub, to Defense Unicorns, to Zarf, and we're going to clone this specific code base. Actually, this one I'll need to do HTTPS, git clone. This example is in Zarf, examples, and in Longhorn. We can see here we have a README file, a values file, the Zarf YAML, and the connect file. So let's take a look at each of these. We'll start with the README file. So this will have all the information about how to set up your machine for working with this Zarf package, as well as what will end up on the Zarf website in the documentation. So as we upgrade our examples, they go into the Zarf documentation. So if somebody looking at the website goes to examples, they can find this example there as well. So this Longhorn example is just one of the examples that's available from the Zarf website. And again, you'll notice the various things we talked about with installation requirements, the NFS client, working with K3s and the CSI are all documented here in the README, so that if you're not on this video or you come back to this later, you can just start with the README file. Let's now take a look at the values file. So the values file, this is taken right from the values file that is recommended by the Longhorn documentation with a couple of small edits. So the one edit here is all the way down here in the kubelet root directory. So you can see here under CSI and kubelet root directory, we have varlib kubelet. If you go through the README and you read the CSI on K3s, this is one of the instructions it says to do. Otherwise, it will not work right. So just I wanted to make a note of that because I stumbled on that as I was getting ready for this demonstration. Let's take a look at that connect.yaml file. You can see here, we have the zarf.dev connect name, the connect URL, and the connection description. This all allows Zarf to feed back to us through the CLI what's available and allows us to connect to this through Zarf Connect. And lastly, let's take a look at the Zarf YAML file. We'll go through each piece of this. This is a Zarf package config. So we mentioned earlier the Zarf init file versus the Zarf package file. This is just a package config. It has a number of components. It has the manifest for the Longhorn Connect that we talked about earlier. That's a Connect YAML file. We're going to use the Helm chart here. So we use the Helm chart installation with the air gap instructions. So we can grab the Longhorn chart from charts.longhorn.io, the 140 example. We're going to place it in Longhorn system. You have to specify which namespace with Helm. And the values file is that values YAML file we looked at earlier. And then the other component are all the images. So if you go to those Longhorn air gap instructions, you'll get a list of all the images required to do Longhorn air gap. We're going to package them into our Zarf package file so that we can install elsewhere. So now we've reviewed all the pieces of this specific example. Let's go ahead and package it. Zarf package create, local directory. Again, it's going to show us all the things about this package that's going to be built, and we're going to say yes. This is going to take a minute or so because this is actually a fairly large package by even Zarf standards. So I'm just going to fast forward as this is running, and we'll pick it back up on the other side. Okay, our Zarf package create is done. So we now have our Zarf package. We can see it right here. There's a Zarf package Longhorn example for AMD64. So let's assume now we've taken this giant package, we've moved it over the air gap into our deployment environment that already has our Kubernetes cluster with Zarf initialized, and we're going to deploy that package. Now, this demonstration I'm doing from I'm not doing from my Mac because Longhorn won't work on the Mac. So I'm in an SSH environment. I'm going to have to do a kind of a double step here where I deploy it here and then jump back to my local machine to open up the website for it. That's only because I don't have like SSH forwarding set up for this demo. Pretty simple demo. But we'll go ahead and run the package deploy. Then we'll come back and make sure it's running. Our package deploy and the name of the package. Again, it is a very large package. This is going to take a few minutes. We'll let it take a few minutes. I'll fast forward through the deployment part, and then we'll come back and make sure it's working right. Okay, everything should be working now. Let's find out. We're going to do Zarf Connect on Longhorn UI, and then we're going to attempt to hit that UI and see if everything's working as we expect. I'm going to go to my other machine, type in Zarf Connect, UI. It opened up the Longhorn dashboard, and we can see here it's running on that Kubernetes cluster. We know it's working, and now you have a working Kubernetes cluster with Zarf packaged up to deploy the Longhorn block storage system. So if you have any questions, you can connect with us on the Kubernetes Slack. If you don't have access, go to slack.kubernetes.io. You can find us in the Zarf channel. Otherwise, you can reach us out to us at zarf.dev and at github.com/defenseunicorn/Zarf. With that, thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.